We are in Hilversum, and I'm talking to Mike Ferguson, Managing Director of Intelligent Business Strategies. Thank you for joining me, Mike. Could you briefly outline your seminar, Building the Enterprise Data Lake?
Good to join you, Werner. Yes, of course. The seminar is about really looking at the complexity of data that's now emerging in the enterprise. Multiple data stores, huge numbers of data sources, and trying to find a way to bring that under control so that you can rapidly produce value from all of that data and do it in a complex distributed environment like that. So we in order to do that, discuss the problem and then look at how you would define a strategy for that and plan for that. Then we look at the methodologies and the technologies being involved in doing that. And then we look at how you would take structured data and standardize that, and then also how you would take the semi-structured data like JSON and XML and unstructured data and handle that kind of thing with the different methodology for that. Then how would you organize data in this data lake environment, and then what are the processes in order to handle it coming in a raw state to getting it into a high value state that can be made available for people to consume all over the enterprise. So ultimately what we're trying to do is make data available as a service inside the enterprise so that people can pick it up and run with it, trust it, know where it came from, but do that across an increasingly complex environment with more and more data sources arriving, many of which are from outside the enterprise that are not so well known, and also dealing with multiple data stores inside the enterprise, including data warehouses, including Hadoop systems. It could be more than one of those, including cloud storage, including NoSQL data stores. So all of that has to be taken into account and managed in this kind of environment.
Okay. Developments are going very rapid in this area. What do you consider the newest technology developments that will most influence the IT landscape when it comes to data lakes?
I think a couple of things. One is the rise of technology, which I think is called information catalogs, to be able to understand what's going on across this complex landscape. They are becoming truly central to managing and operating a data lake. I think in addition to that, we have the emergence of software that can execute in multiple environments. So if you need to run jobs in the cloud, you can. If you need to run jobs on a data warehousing environment, you can. If you want to run it on a Hadoop system, you can. So you have this ability to define something once and run it in multiple places. I think that is also having a significant bearing. And then third is the emergence of self-service data integration and data preparation along with IT doing it. And so we now got business and IT involved in it. And so there's a need for collaboration to work together on this, to maybe do it with multiple tools or different user interfaces to the same platform in order to process data. And I guess four is the implication on new legislation here in the European Union. We have GDPR, for example, data privacy, and how would that apply to this more complex data landscape, considering all of these new data stores, all of these files, and all of these data sources that are emerging. How on earth do you step up to dealing with that kind of, getting that problem under control, because we have to from a legislative perspective, but how can you get it under control across this more complex landscape? I think those would be the big ones.
Could you briefly outline the key topics that you're covering in the two-day seminar?
Yes, I think the first topic is to describe really, in order to plan for this, you have to describe the problem, what's emerging here in terms of the complexity around data. Then I think what we then do is look at, okay, what are the ways out of it, and define what a data lake is. Even that is different when you talk to a lot of different vendors around the industry today. You get different definitions of a data lake. So we look at the different configuration options for a data lake, and then look at the pros and cons of each of those. And then, of course, say, okay, well, what is it we would need to do to plan for this? What are the technology components you would need to consider? How would you organize yourself for this? What kind of methodologies would you need to consider in processing data in a data lake? How would we collaborate so that business and IT can solve these problems together? And how do you track everything that's going on so that we're clear about new data coming in, new data being produced, and keep it organized so it doesn't end up completely chaotic and in a big mess? I think then, in addition to that, we look at the processes and the sort of sequence of tasks that you can create in order to introduce agility into this complex environment and still rapidly produce valuable insight, valuable data that can be consumed, elsewhere across the enterprise. So I think these are the key things. To try and end up with effectively people leaving with a kind of plan of action to tackle this and get it set up so that it lasts for the long term, so that we're able to get something in place that remains governable, that produces high value insight and information that's really going to make a difference to a business.
Okay. Who is the workshop intended for? So what are the most common job titles of those who attend?
Well, we still see a lot of IT professionals who come out of the data warehousing space, business intelligence kind of space. We see data architects, enterprise data architects, as well as ordinary data management professionals, ETL developers, DBAs. Also seeing chief data officers appearing, looking at this problem, how to deal with it. Sometimes, now that we're dealing with the whole security and privacy thing, you occasionally will get compliance officers even now looking at this and how to manage it. And even, of course, the business analysts and data scientists who are involved in working in a data lake environment in order to do self-service data integration and data preparation. So I think it's a mix of all of those kind of roles that are turning up at this kind of seminar.
Okay. And when you look at the attendees for this seminar, what's the most common problem, or what's the biggest challenge that they face at their daily work?
I think two things that come up a lot. One is trying to understand the business drivers for this, the business case, and how to link it back to value for the business. And then a second thing I see a lot is this whole issue of metadata. With all of these tools and technologies being used, how do you keep the metadata integrated in order to manage the problem and not have to continue to rekey it again and again across all of these tools? I think those are the two things that jump out.
Okay. Now, what did I forget? Is there something you would like to add finally?
Yeah, probably. I think one of the new things that's kind of emerging around data lake, even though data lake itself is a fairly new topic, I still think the emergence of streaming data is now coming more and more to the fore. As we bring in sensor data, as we bring in click stream data, live clicks happening on our website, social media data streaming in, all of that is now a new challenge. How do we tie that in? How do you handle that kind of data arriving at the velocity that it's arriving at? And still make people aware of it and produce value from it? Is that you know, a lot of questions I get asked, is that completely new technology? Is it the existing technology can handle that in this data lake environment? So I think that's probably also giving right, you know, linked to the Internet of Things, and I think the general trend is that real time is going, and streaming data is going to become the new normal, and therefore we have to change how we operate in order to be able to handle continuous flow of data rather than just this batch oriented heritage that we've come from.
Okay. Probably already is the new normal.
Probably is, yeah.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much for the interview.
Okay, thank you. A pleasure to be here again. Thanks again.